Good morning. Monday, December 28th. This is the last session of 2020. Let's start right off, set our intentions for today by saying the Four Measurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. We're going to do 3 short sessions of sitting meditation today. It's a little bit different. We'll do 3 7-minute sessions. We'll do a little bit of reading from that book, Rebel Buddha by Dzogchen Rinpoche, and take some questions. So let's start by sitting for 7 minutes. Get into the posture, comfortable position, legs folded back straight. Let's start right now. And if you want to use the Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche technique of concentrating on the out breath, and in the out breath, it's almost like you're merging your consciousness and mind with space. Space being the space in front of you, immediately in front of you, which is the same really as space everywhere. There might be different contents in the space in front of you than there is in outer space, but space is space, basically. Contents meaning like whatever, oxygen or gases or nitrogen or whatever it is. So focus on the out breath and letting almost your mind and consciousness come out and merge with space. And you can let the in-breath happen on its own. You don't even have to be aware of it necessarily. Remember, what we're trying to do is become aware of how our mind is working and how our thoughts arise and dissolve. It's not about not thinking. And we catch ourselves thinking. We become aware that we're thinking and then go back to the breath. The breath is our anchor. The thoughts arising and dissolving in the mind, we compare it to clouds arising and dissolving in a perfectly clear, unstained blue sky. Okay. These shorter sessions of meditation are really good. It's good to mix it up, You can do a longer session one day. You can do a couple of shorter sessions, take breaks in between. And also, during the course of your day, especially when you're experiencing some difficulties or whatever, it's good to check into the mind that is looking at mind, this practice. I'm not saying get into posture or even, necessarily the technique, but just the awareness of the thoughts, awareness of the fact that you're thinking and letting it be, letting it dissolve. It's really good practice, both on the cushion and off. So we'll read a little bit from Rebel Buddha, A Guide to a Revolution of Mind by Dzogchen Rinpoche. There's the cover if you want to buy it. It's really good, as are all of his books. He's a wonderful teacher, and has spent a lot of time in the West. So he can put things in, I think, ways that are easy for people who don't come necessarily from Buddhist backgrounds, and you can put it those teachings and concepts in easily understandable ways. So we're gonna read a little bit. It's really talking about Buddhism in general here, but I think it's good for us to think about. We're always trying to catch up with reality, which just is. Whether we love it or hate it, or love or hate each other, we can't change the way things are at their deepest levels. We can't stop being who we truly are, just as we can't stop a subatomic particle from being what it truly is. The makeup of the physical world is constantly being re-examined and re-envisioned. When we bring these views to bear on the world we take to be solid, we're getting closer to what the Buddha taught 2,600 years ago about the ultimate unreality and unfindability of all phenomena. In Buddhism, we aren't trying to look at the physical world by itself. Instead, we're looking at the mind and its relationship to the appearances of the world. We observe the mind to see what the mind itself is and how it acts in relation to our internal and external experiences of everything, from thoughts and emotions to actual things. We need to ask ourselves in the beginning, am I willing to let go of my attachment to what I believe in order to see something new? Am I open to the possibility of an inconceivable reality? Our main problem is that such a reality doesn't fit in with our ordinary experience. If we believe that our senses and our conceptual mind are giving us a true and complete picture of the world and who we are in it, we're just fooling ourselves. We need to expand our understanding beyond our sense perceptions and concepts, which are nothing but tiny windows through which we only see a partial reality. In order to see a higher level of reality, we need to look out of a larger window. In Buddhism, intellectual analysis on the one hand and opening up to what lies beyond concept on the other are not regarded as contradictory. We can see that the Buddhist spiritual path does not fit neatly into the category or general understanding of religion, except perhaps in an academic sense. You can practice Buddhism as a traditional religion if that's what suits you. There are Buddhist churches that provide a sense of community for their members and a regular schedule of social activities and practice. The value of harmonious, compassionate living are cultivated, and there's a sense of reverence for the Buddha and the great teachers who came after him. This is a valuable aspect of the tradition, and it is the way Buddhism's practiced in many places around the world. However, the essence of Buddhism transcends all these forms. It is the pure wisdom and compassion that exists in inconceivable measure within the minds of all beings. And the Buddhist spiritual path is the journey we take to fully realize this true nature of mind. As modern rational people living in the scientific age, we like to think that our beliefs are based on things like experience, good judgment, and reasoning rather than blind faith. But if we honestly examine our ordinary assumptions, we find that many of our beliefs are simply things we've been told, things we take for granted. Believing without understanding is the meaning of blind faith. This kind of blind faith shows up in common knowledge we live by every day. We assume that things are what they are because everybody says so. From the time we learn to speak as kids, we discover that everything has a name, and that name is what a thing is. We don't question it. We also don't see the power of those labels to shape our thinking or limit our understanding. Naming and labeling always function on multiple levels. They help us live together in the world, and they also make our world heavier and more solid. Our blind faith in our mundane reality is no different from religious blind faith. Someone tells you heaven and hell exist, and consequently you fix your hopes on one and live in fear of the other. But what do heaven and hell really mean? Where are they? When? What act will push you across the line into one or the other? Buddha's advice to us is to challenge our blind faith. In order to find out what's really going on at any level of reality, we have to approach our experience with discriminating awareness. Remember, at one time, everyone thought the world was flat and the sun circled around it. Ironically, in some respects, modern science has become our collective religion. We tend to believe what science tells us about our physical reality without much thought. On the other hand, when we're told about the true nature of mind, we don't easily believe it. Why do we believe in black holes, something we can't readily experience, but doubt that our mind is awakened? While we may not have the opportunity to personally verify the research of scientists, we can evaluate the Buddha's teachings on mind firsthand. At some point, after a period of questioning, analysis, and meditation, we can say with certainty whether those teachings are true in our experience or not. One of the most important teachings given by the Buddha is a simple, common sense statement that carries profound implications for both our social and spiritual lives. In answer to a question posed by villagers about how to know what to believe when there are so many conflicting belief systems and doctrines being asserted by teachers and pundits, the Buddha once advised, "Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything because it is spoken and rumored by many. Do not believe in anything simply because it is found written in your religious books. Do not believe in anything merely on the authority of your teachers and elders. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it." What the Buddha is saying in this quotation is that we must investigate any presentation of the truth that claims to be authoritative. We should question its reasoning and logic with our own reasoning and logic. We should analyze from top to bottom, inside and out. If we find that it's reasonable, helpful, and beneficial, not just for ourselves, but for others as well, then we can accept it. This is a very important teaching for us because it's possible to hear a profound teaching on compassion or emptiness, or to read a scientific proof of global warming and accept it, but not live by its implications. We're so enthusiastic at first, but there's no follow through. That's because we haven't examined it to such an extent that we really know what it means. As long as our understanding is vague, we're doubtful. So if there is any wisdom there, it never touches us in a meaningful way. Ultimately, the Buddha is saying that the solution to our doubts is not to adopt the blind faith of true believers, even or especially Buddhist true believers. Instead, it's an unshakable certainty, a complete trust in our own hard-won understanding about the nature of things. We trust this understanding because we've arrived at it through our own investigation. We need to find our own way because there is no one-size-fits-all spiritual path. We find that path through examination and questioning, and through our genuine heart of inquisitiveness. We can rely on the wisdom of the Buddha as an example, but to understand that wisdom for ourselves, we must rely on our own rebel Buddha mind. It's a very big teaching and a really big concept. That's why practice is so important. Buddhism's not just about reading, teachings and accepting beliefs. It's really about working with your own mind and seeing how your mind works and seeing the benefit of that to yourself, to those around you, and how you can be a benefit to all beings ultimately. So let's sit with that and meditate for another 7 minutes, and then we'll take some questions. Okay. I think it's important to, the passage we just read, to make the distinction that Dzogchen Ponlop Rinpoche and the Buddha are not talking about not accepting the teachings. It's not in conflict with the teaching. So even your teacher, if you have an authentic Lama, and by authentic teacher, authentic Lama, I mean someone who's basically part of a lineage that's received oral transmission, generation and by generation, going back to the Buddha, which there are those authentic teachers, many of them. It's not negating that, or putting a negative spin on that, or disregarding that. It's basically saying, even with authentic teachings and teachers and lineages, it's important for you, the practitioner, the student, to try it on and see how it works, and see how it works for you, and see that it brings benefit to you and other beings, and all beings, ultimately, when you start to understand that. And it's important to test that out. It's not asking you to accept with blind faith this doctrine or this, set of instructions or rules. And that's why I love it. Um, it's not just about saying, oh, it's all about love and compassion, which it is, of course, but it's really about, it's a method of working with your own mind. That's what attracted me to it ultimately. And what kept me there. Maybe what attracted me was something else. I'm not really sure. I don't really remember. Let's do some questions if we have any today. I'm new here, so apologies if this has already been asked. But who is your teacher? Who is your teacher, and what is his lineage? My teacher is Garchen Rinpoche. So the mantra that you hear before we start the class, that's Garchen Rinpoche doing the white Tara mantra. Garchen Rinpoche is a teacher in the Drikung Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. So there's 4 main schools of Tibetan Buddhism, one of which is Kagyu. And Kagyu has several sub-branches within it. And Drikung Kagyu is one of those branches. It is the founder of the lineage is Jigten Sumgon, who I guess lived about, I don't know, maybe 800 years ago, I believe. I could be wrong. I think it's 800 years. And the Kagyu lineage can be traced basically to Tilopa, who was Indian, actually. But Garchen Rinpoche has an institute in Arizona, Chino Valley, Arizona. He has several centers, other centers in the U.S. and around the world. I would suggest checking him out online. There's lots of his teachings. Do you feel most of our reality is our perceptions, and that without attachment of our perceptions, we can see and feel true reality? Short answer, yes. That's pretty much what, I think Dzogchen Ponlop was saying in the beginning of that reading we did today, where he said, basically, we're always trying to catch up with reality. Here in Buddhism, we aren't trying to look at the physical world by itself. We're looking at the mind and its relationship to the appearances of the world. We experience everything through our mind, right? And through our sense faculties, which are the windows. He was talking about the small windows. Well, the small windows are our sense faculties, right? So your eyes, you can only see what's in your field of vision, right? You don't see the totality of the universe with your eyes. The same with your other sense faculties. So the sensory input, which is the input of information, is limited to those small windows. And it's our mind or our consciousness which kind of translates that input of information into our understanding and how we see the world. So if the input is that limited, so is going to be the understanding, which is why we need the teachings, which see things from a much wider, broader perspective. Right? So if we can expand our mind through understanding the nature of reality, then our experience of reality is not necessarily going to be limited to the small windows of our sense faculties, right? While meditating, I find myself, When visualizing the sky or concentrating on the breath, I'm actually hearing my voice regarding both. Is this in itself conscious thought? It is very challenging for me to find any space between thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I think thought and thinking, we always hear our own voice. I mean, I do at least. It's our voice kind of interpreting everything we're seeing and experiencing all the time. I think the key for you would be is to let go. Once you're aware of the fact that you're thinking, to kind of let things settle. Maybe you're holding on too tightly to the visualization itself or the concentrating on the breath. Maybe you need to, when we talk about recognizing the fact that we're thinking and leaving the thought where it is, to focus on that, to focus on the just the acknowledgement and then letting it go. Maybe that's enough. I also think it could be, we've done this little practice where we took a break and we would get up and still try to practice, and vice versa. So taking a break, getting up, but still staying with the idea of watching our thoughts, leaving them where they are, not following trains of thought, not judging thought. Conversely, we also practice sitting on the cushion in the posture and not meditating and just letting be. Maybe those may help you as well. And I think it's going to come with experience too, with just constant practice and consistent practice. It's not, you're talking about a mechanism that has existed your whole life, and maybe many lives, probably many lives. So they're habitual responses that are very difficult to break and get through. So I would say have a little patience and keep going. With the new year approaching on the calendar, how does this work with the concept of time in Buddhism? I mean, time and I mean, I guess in Buddhism is just kind of a marker for us to, help function in the mundane world, right? So, in old times, the spring was the time to, or whatever, the spring is the time to plant and the fall is the time to harvest. And, in terms of enlightenment and all those things, I don't think time has any factor at all, except for knowing that our time in this physical body is very limited. So, it's important to practice now. There's not probably going to come a better time in the future when all you're free of all responsibilities, and your life is all cleaned up, and now you retire and now you have the time to practice. That's all an illusion, because we know we can die at any moment. Who knows if I'm going to get up off this cushion right now, right? Who knows if, when you breathe out, if you're going to breathe in again, or the roof is going to fall down, not to be morose or anything, but that is reality. How is meditation going to help change the world? Well, I think you can answer that question, Ashrith. I really do. I really think you can answer that question. But if everyone were to become enlightened and would, transcend all their negative emotions, there wouldn't be, any aggression, violence, or hatred, right? So the world would be very different. But even without achieving enlightenment, even with achieving some progress, some awareness of how the mind works, some lessening of the negative emotions, and less engagement and acting out of the negative emotions, that's going to help immensely, incalculably, right? Just think about it. You think about world leaders who are some of the most more aggressive ones who are engaged in warfare and greed and conquering and things like that. If they were to practice these, and understand uh, deeper levels of reality, they might not be doing those things. Will my practice allow me to cultivate a deeper sense of both wisdom and compassion? Yes, it will. If you find an authentic teacher and follow the teachings, I think meditation, I practice meditation as an aspect of being a Buddhist, and incorporating the Buddhist teachings into my life as best as I can. I mean, like I said, I'm not a teacher. I'm a fellow student who's passing on and kind of repeating what I hear from authentic teachers. This is a process like anything. And we all deal with our negative emotions like anger and impatience and jealousy, and these things are part of our lives. They've been part of our lives for eons. So we're just trying to get a better handle on them, and how to deal with them in ways that don't constantly cause negative karma or destruction or conflict. But if you sincerely practice and authentically practice, I think, the Buddhist path in an authentic way, yes, you will cultivate a deeper sense of wisdom and compassion. I am a devout practicing Catholic, and since Buddhism is considered a religion, I feel a bit conflicted. Any advice? Well, I mean, are you practicing meditation or just Buddhism or both? I mean, we were touching on Buddhist concepts in this class. I mean, the Meditation 101 was much more secular and just dealing with meditation, which is not necessarily a religious practice, but we are dealing with the concepts of Buddhism. And Buddhism is, to many a religion. To many it's not, but it in many ways it is, of course. That's up to you. Kind of like what we were reading about, even the quote from the actual teachings of the Buddha, the sutras. Um, Try it out. I mean, I don't think you have anything to lose. If being a devout practicing Catholic, brings you, what you hope to get from it, then that may be enough. If you feel it's a path that's authentic and brings you a lot of makes you a better person, makes your world better, makes you better to people around you, um, then that's great. Even the Dalai Lama himself says it. Um, he always encouraged people to stay in their tradition for some reason. Um, of course, if you feel a particularly strong connection to Buddhism, then it's good that you follow it. But if you're satisfied, if you feel your path, your tradition gives you the answers that you need, and the path that you want to follow, that's fine. It's funny. I just posted a picture of the Dalai Lama holding a crucifix to his head. That's a sign when you hold something. Like if I hold this book is a book by Buddhist teachers, Dharma. I hold it to my head. That's showing reverence to it. Dalai Lama, respects all religions and understands the importance of it to importance of religions to people. So he's not trying to convert the world to Buddhism by any means. That is not the point. That's not the point of any of us who are engaged with discussing the teachings. So if you something's obviously calling you towards meditation, whether or not it's calling you towards Buddhism, I think you have to decide. But I don't necessarily think these things are in conflict. Is there a person on this planet who can tell us whether there's more good karma or bad karma on Earth? I always have been wondering about it, but I think there is more good karma. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if there's necessarily just good karma and bad karma. There's also neutral karma probably as well, and sometimes these things have been, I think, interplay all the time. There's various degrees of karma, more, heavier, bad karma, obviously killing, out of, some kind of evil motivation is extremely heavy karma. Telling a white lie might be less karma. So there's various degrees. I don't know if there's a person who can tell us, maybe. Is your lineage associated with Naropa University, Shambhala tradition? Have you been? I actually have been there when my son was looking at colleges. Naropa University was started by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. We discussed one of his meditation techniques today. We've read from his books in the past. I read a lot of his books. I think I watch a lot of his teachings. There's a lot of his teachings on YouTube. I think he's an incredible teacher. He was also of the Kagyu lineage, Karma Kagyu lineage, which is Kagyu, like I said, is one of the 4 branches of Buddhism, and there's sub branches within the Kagyu. My teacher, Garchen Rinpoche, is Drikun Kagyu. So I am not necessarily part of the Shambhala tradition, which he started, but I read a lot of his stuff. I mean, I think he's an amazing teacher. I have been meditating on and off for 5+ years, but haven't found a specific practice to follow. What has kept you with this practice for so long, and have you tried others? I mean, what's kept me really to the practice is the blessing of my teacher, really. So, I mean, if you're really getting into Buddhism, I think it's important to find a teacher that you take. They say you take refuge in your teacher, which taking refuge, the refuge vows. You're taking refuge from samsara in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha is the Buddha himself, but Buddha also kind of is your teacher. Your teacher is almost, in my tradition, more important than the Buddha, really, because he's the one, or she's the one, giving you the Dharma. Dharma is the teaching. You take refuge in the teaching, and the Sangha, which is the congregation, basically, of all of practitioners, like we are. We're a Sangha, basically, because we are doing practice together. So you're taking refuge, and you take refuge you say these vows in the presence of your teacher. Your teacher gives you these vows. But I think having that authentic teacher gives you that confidence more than anything. I found that, at least. What is Buddhism's relationship with love? Well, I mean, love in terms of what you mean, like compassion to love. Basically, love is everything in Buddhism. Ultimately, love is a guiding force, right? Compassion and love, is basically being able to see with a wider perspective the fact of interdependence, interconnectedness, impermanence, and those things. And the more we practice, and the less we're dominated by negative emotions, the more those qualities emerge. Have you read Osho? A little bit. I really try to stick into Buddhism, and especially, particularly Tibetan Buddhism. I mean, there's so many wisdom traditions in the world. And there's a lot of authentic paths and teachers and stuff, but I find there's a saying, right? What's more effective? If you're trying to find water in the desert, is it more effective digging 1,000 holes 1 feet deep, or one hole 1,000 feet deep? You know what I mean? So you can dabble with all these traditions and little bits of New Age psychology and Buddhism and Hinduism and Osho and Krishnamurti, and there's a lot of wisdom in most of these, but Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche called that kind of like the spiritual supermarket shopping, a little bit of this and that, and you have so many choices. I think it's more effective, and more progress is made when you find an authentic path and stick with it, and really give yourself to it. My opinion, there's better results that way. Is avoiding materialism and focusing on living like more basically part of Buddhism? Yes and no. Just the fact of living more basically without any other acknowledgement of trying to work with the mind and nature of the mind doesn't necessarily do anything either. um, the Buddha, before he became enlightened, he was practicing and studying with ascetics, these people who were like, they didn't, or they barely ate, and they sat they sat for like 20 hours a day, or they didn't sleep. They put the body through all these very rigid and harsh trials as a way of uh, kind of purging the body, or kind of like totally rejecting the materialism or the world. And the Buddha found that that didn't necessarily lead to enlightenment. Then again, having attachment to material things and really having that be your focus, um, is definitely an impasse to spirituality. So um, it's not an end to it, unto itself, but becoming a monk, which is dedicating yourself to a spiritual life, you basically don't really own things. Don't. You're basically taking kind of a vow of poverty in a way. They don't eat after sundown or after their second meal. Um, they don't have clothes besides their robes, really. And they are avoiding materialism because they really want to just focus on the spiritual path. But I think that's something you have to address as an individual. Since I started meditating on a regular basis, I don't have strong desire to spend time with friends or people. Is that common? I think what becomes common is you may realize certain relationships have a limited quality to them that no longer is satisfying. And sometimes even they can have negative connotations, that a certain negativity that you may have dwelled in together. Say it's about criticizing certain people. You and this friend like to criticize this other person or this other thing. And through your meditation, you're kind of realizing that that kind of engagement is something you want to shed as part of your spiritual path. That you may find. um, and you may want to turn more towards people, or have people in your life who are pursuing similar spiritual goals or similar goals. How did you go about finding your teacher? I really just dove into the Buddhist world and just was constantly on the lookout for teachings and tried to attend them. So once I started going to teachings, you hear about other teachers and you meet people. And I was living in New York when I started going to Buddhist teachings, and whatever Tibetan Buddhist teachers came, I would try to go see them. And through them, I found other teachers and other people who were part of the community, and heard about other, teachers coming, and this was really before I was spending a lot of time on the internet. So now a lot of these teachers do live, similar to what we're doing. You have great masters teaching live webinars and live, YouTube sessions. So it's really, just dive in, Google, search for, Buddhist teachers, live teachings, websites, email lists, all that. Have you thought about opening up this sangha so we can see each other? No, I haven't. I don't know how to do that. I think it would be, I don't know. I think it might freak me out a little bit, to be honest with you. I don't know. There's a little bit of a sense of a vacuum that kind of, gives me a little bit of comfort, almost an illusion that I'm doing it alone, although I do feel the energy of a lot of people here, but that might be a little bit overwhelming. I don't know. Maybe we'll do it at some point. What's a simple meditation practice we can employ? Technique, how long and often? I mean, the technique is what we've been doing. I mean, if this is your first class, you can go to the 101 teachings on IGTV or YouTube, Michael Imperioli Meditation 101 YouTube channel. Look at the 101 videos that has the technique in detail, or session 8 of 102. And last week's session as well, session 12, has a detailed technique. How long and often, that's up to you. Find what works. Start off with small sessions. Are there concepts of apocalypse and end of the world in Buddhism teachings? They're not like predictions per se of. Padmasambhava did talk about the degenerate age, which we're probably in when there's lots of war and violence and plague and illness and poverty and things like that. But Buddhists, I think they believe that everything's impermanent. So even on a macro scale, like the Big Bang, right? Big Bang happens and the universe expands and worlds are created and world systems and species are created. And eventually that's going to dissolve or disintegrate or explode or not exist. And things will disappear. And then another Big Bang will happen. And that has been happening for eternity and will happen for eternity. I think that's the Buddhist perspective on that, at least what I know of it. Have you learned any Tibetan? I say there's a lot. I learned a lot of prayers in Tibetan, but I don't really know how to speak it or translate it or anything like that. But I've learned some just by, rote. We recommend readings on reflections on death. Um, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. Sogyal. That's a good one. Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. Not the Tibetan Book of the Dead. That's different. Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. Thoughts on mindfulness meditation? That's kind of what we're doing. You also asked that simple meditation practice. You should check out what I mentioned, those other classes that we did here, because it'll be more specific of the technique. Because I'm getting the sense that you're kind of new to this. How do you distinguish between calls that will do harm to other beings and call that will do benefit? I mean, that comes through practice. That comes through practice and having kind of clarity and transcending negative emotion, really. And the more you do that, the more clear you'll be able to see where you put your energy and what's a positive way to behave, what's creating good karma, what's creating bad karma. And that's through practice. What's your opinion on schools replacing suspension programs with meditation? I mean, adding meditation to schools is good, period. I don't know about replacing suspension. I mean, I'm not sure about those statistics or whatever, but I think putting meditation is great. Okay. I think that's it. Um, yeah, good. Thank you. Let's do seven. Oh, we're almost done. Let's do 5 minutes and then we'll close out. So we did 3 short bursts today. That's pretty cool. Okay. We're talking about Buddha who practiced. I think it's pronounced ascetics, not ascetics. Just thought about that for a minute. Since this is the last class of 2020, um, I just want to thank all of you for. This would not have happened, without you. You made this happen, really, and it's been a great benefit to me personally. And for that, I'm grateful and thank you. I want to thank our producer, Nick Solidio, who does this as an offering, really, to you all, out of the goodness and kindness of his heart. So we're grateful to him, and I'm grateful to you. Really, I mean that. It's helped my practice immensely, and it's been a difficult year for all of us, obviously, and it's been it's just been something very positive, you know, to a positive anchor in a very difficult time. So I'm very grateful. Next week and the week after, we may be doing just Sundays for 2 weeks in a row because I have to travel and work on Mondays. So let's dedicate the merit. Maybe think of dedicating the merit of this year and doing this class for these weeks. I think it's been like 5 months now. So maybe take this whole chunk of 5 months of merit and dedicate it all to the benefit of all beings. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Remember, a drop in the ocean becomes the ocean. So you know, don't never think of merit that you're dedicating to all beings as something so tiny that it's ineffectual to all beings. Think of it in terms of that. A drop of water into the ocean instantly becomes the whole ocean. Think of it in those terms. See you next week.